Hi, ciao, buongiorno. Welcome to Italian with Sandra. This one of the first few sessions. I hope you are enjoying them or finding them useful. So do like my videos and subscribe. It is all free. There is nothing to pay. And as I said in previous sessions, feel free to ask any questions about Italian, any doubts that you have, any difficulties that you find when you're learning. And I'm sure I'll find an answer to your questions. Um, I haven't introduced myself properly, really. As I said, my name is Sandra. I am a native Italian. I'm exactly from Sardinia. Sardinia is an island of Italy. When I first moved to the UK, most people didn't even know about the existence of Sardinia. So when they asked me where I was from, and I said Sardinia, I said, Sicily. No. In fact, I remember that if I looked at a map of Italy, Sardinia wasn't even there. There was Sicily, which is the triangular shaped island at the bottom of Italy, but Sardinia is more a rectangular shape, really in the middle between Italy and Spain. In Sardinia, we do have our own language, which is a very old language that comes straight from Latin, like Italian does. But obviously, the official language is Italian. In the future, we'll talk about more about maybe the different regions, the different traditions, cuisine, accents, dialects, languages, because Italy really is made up of 19 regions, which are all completely different from each other. And probably Sardinia even a little bit more different, being an island and being more isolated. So for today's session, a brief session, I'm going to cover again a bit of grammar. This is more intermediate level. We're talking about the past tense or one of the past tenses. I'm talking about the imperfect tense, imperfetto, which is maybe, I don't know, the second or third or fourth tense that normally students learn. And obviously very, very useful. In fact, it's essential. If you do learn 3 tenses in Italian, I say learn the present, passato prossimo, and imperfetto. So let me share the screen. I have an image here that we are going to look at together. So we are going to see how to conjugate the verbs when we want to use the imperfect tense. So what kind of endings do we have? The imperfect tense is actually one of, in fact, maybe the easiest. I think it is the easiest tense to conjugate because, in fact, obviously, if you are at an intermediate level, you know what I'm talking about. When I mention conjugations and endings, and when I say that this is one of the easiest, if not the easiest, so one of the easier, if not the easiest, tense to conjugate. So here we have, as usual, the 3 groups of verbs, the ones that end in are, in the infinitive, the one that end in ere, and the ones that end in ire. These are the three groups that we can separate the verbs in Italian. We have most of the verbs in Italian are regular and belong to the group in are. We have a bit less, a lower number of verbs in ere, and then an even smaller number in ire. So once we have our infinitive, so here we have parlare, to speak, leggere, to read, and dormire, to sleep. So once we have our infinitive, what we do for our conjugation, the easiest thing is if we drop re. Normally we drop the whole are and we add the endings to that. Instead, if we drop only re from each of the three groups, then we only add, in fact, we add exactly the same endings to the three groups. Here is not what this image is suggesting, but if you don't look too much at the color, unfortunately, you got this blue, but it's a perfect way to show it. I'm not criticizing it at all, but there is just a slightly even easier way to learn these endings. So if we drop re from the infinitive, can you see we are adding? So in fact, we end up with parla, legge, and dormi. So we are adding to the first person, io, we are adding vo. Parlavo, leggevo, dormivo. The second person, tu, we are adding vi for the three groups. See, parlavi, leggevi, dormivi. The third person, lui and lei, we are adding va. Parlava, leggeva, dormiva. And then we are adding vamo for the first person plural, noi. Parlavamo, leggevamo, dormivamo. We're adding te to voi, the second person plural. Parlavate, leggevate, dormivate. And then we are adding vano for loro, the third person plural. Parlavano, leggevano, dormivano. So basically you're adding vo, vi, va, vamo, vate, vano. Very, very easy compared to all the other tenses, all the other conjugations. Again, I repeat, it makes sense for those who have already learned a few tenses and they know what we're talking about when we talk about endings and how sometimes confusing they can be. Now, this image in particular is quite useful because can you see there's a little line under the vowels here. It's very useful because it tells you exactly where the stress on the words goes. So when it comes to the imperfect tense, you have to be careful to the stress in the words. Can you see? So it stays the same. I'm just going to use parlare because it's just the same for the three groups. So there is no need to repeat it for the other two. If you see here, the stress is on the a. Parlavo, parlavi, parlava. Then I'm skipping those two and I'm jumping in here. Parlavano. So can you see the stress is basically on the syllable before last or the syllable before the V. Imperfect, it's easy to recognize it because you have so many V's. See, vo, viva, vamo, vate, vano, as we've just seen. So the first three persons and the last, they have the stress exactly in the same place, the syllable before the ending, basically, the syllable before the V. However, it's easier for you to remember. But however, when we look at noi and voi, see the stress in the word is in a different position. It's actually on the start of the ending, on the V. Parlavamo, parlavate. As I said, it's exactly the same for the other two groups. So this is something to watch out for when you're using learning and using the imperfect tense. Briefly, we'll talk about a bit more, if not a lot more, about the imperfect tense later on as well. But briefly, when do we use the imperfect? Basically, the translation, literal translation, which helps, especially when you have to compare this past tense, this imperfect, with other past tenses like passato prossimo. So this one, the two translations for the imperfect tense in English, one is I used to do something, I used to speak, I used to read, I used to sleep. The other one is I was doing something. So I was speaking, I was reading, I was sleeping. So the first one, I used to do something. That's when you were talking about an action that we used to do, to repeat in the past on a regular basis. For example, if you want to say that when you were a child, you went to school every day, specifically, you'd say, when I was a child, I used to go to school every day by bus, for example. So I used to go to school, meaning that for the whole duration of your childhood, you went to school every day, and every day you went by bus. So it's a habitual, a repeated action in the past. It could be a long time, like many years, or it could just be 1 week, but it is a repeated action in the past. The second translation is I was doing something. So for example, this one is not it's a different different tense in English completely. So if I say that I was doing something at a specific moment, but I'm not specifying the beginning and the end of this duration, how long I did this action for. For example, I can say that yesterday at 10 o'clock, I was playing tennis. I'm not saying when I started and when I finished. I'm just saying that at the specific time, for a while, obviously, I was doing a specific action. In this case, I was playing tennis. So these two tenses, specific, and so you need to be, in fact, you need to be really specific, especially at the beginning when you're learning this tense. Otherwise, you would get it confused with other past tenses, especially, as I said, passato prossimo. So to recap, first translation of the imperfect tense in English is I used to do something, so a repeated action in the past, an action that you did on a regular basis. And the other translation is I was doing something. So something that you did at a certain point, or you were in the process of doing at a certain point, but you're not specifying how long the action lasted. I think this will be enough for now. we will talk again about the imperfect tense, especially when we can compare it with passato prossimo, because normally passato prossimo is studied before the imperfect tense. So when you think you've mastered, finally you've mastered the passato prossimo, and you think, oh yes, I can do this and that. Yes, I know what I'm doing. And then, ta-da, suddenly the imperfect tense arrives, and it can cause a bit of confusion because you need to see the difference between them. So we will cover it again. I hope you found this session useful, and hopefully it has answered some questions that you had. And as I said before, please feel free to write your questions, and I'll be very happy to, to have just a session for whichever question you have. Do press the like button and do subscribe. Share the videos with whoever you think may benefit from these sessions. I know I've been talking so far about grammar, but grammar it really is essential. Later on, we'll do different things. We'll put sentences together. We'll learn the colloquial language compared to the written language. We'll see so many other things, but this is how we're going to start for now. So I will see you on the next session, and arrivederci. Ciao.